In this video, I'll go through how I turned this tank into this. This is a clear Mini 16 by Waterbox. It's 24 inches by 12 by 14 inches tall. Has an approximate gallons of 16. Has nice mitered 45-degree edges and ultra clear glass. The seams are really nice, and I've used one of these tanks for another saltwater tank that I've featured, my lagoon mangrove tank, and it's held up very well. So this tank I wanted to set up in kind of a Iwagumi style-ish tank. I say ish because I did want to use this little house, and I did want to use some trees in the scape, so I guess technically it's a diorama style. The stones I used here are seri stones, and the soil that I am using is fluval stratum. This was the larger bag. I believe it's like 8 pounds, and that made a nice layer of soil for my scape. Here you see my daughter and I setting up the scape with kind of two mountains or hills on each side, and then a pathway in the middle. So I added 3 pots of Hamayathus cuba from Boost Plants. And here I am washing off the gel. I feel like when I planted the tank, I planted it pretty heavy. Here you can also see the trees that I am going to use to add to the tank. I think planting heavily, at least what I've read and seen from other videos, helps out with a good carpet. This is using the dry start method, so I use a misting spray about once a day, once every other day, then adding saran wrap to the top with a hole to allow some air exchange, but not much. This whole process took me about 2 weeks before I added water to the tank. And here's the tank before I added the moss to the top of the trees. Once again, looking at, I planted pretty densely, and I think that was helpful. One other thing I decided to do was add some aqua soil and some of the moss to a coffee grinder that I had. So this was Christmas moss, and then I add a little bit of water, RO water, and then I ground it up. And the idea was to kind of make a paste that I would then try to paint onto the rocks to try to get kind of some moss to grow on the rocks. And I did a lot of painting. I added a lot of the mixture to the different surfaces of the tank, such as the rocks and the house. And you'll see in later clips that some of it actually did take, and is still growing today, so I'm interested to see how that works out if the moss continues to grow, because I really felt like it was just kind of surviving barely, but I was surprised at how much that I did see. One other thing I'd like to mention is the light that I'm running. So I am running the Chihira's RGB 2. I'm not running the Pro, but it's a pretty intense light. I was running it all at 100% for about 12 hours a day. So very intense light, ran for quite a long time photo period. Now, once I added water to the tank, I have reduced the amount of light down to 8 hours. And now you can see the moss that I added to the trees to kind of make the canopy. This was Christmas moss. I did leave it in there, but then it really started to brown out. So I moved the trees to another tank that I had, and the moss is coming back once it was grown submerged. So this is the tank 1 week later. I was happy because I didn't really see a lot of die-off. There wasn't necessarily a lot of growth. There was a little bit of growth, not really a lot, but I was really happy to see that everything was nice and green and it looked healthy. The moss still looked healthy at this point, but then after about week 2 to week 3, it did start to brown out on me, and that's when I moved it over to the other tank. I put this little humidifier temperature thing in there. I don't know how accurate it was, but eventually after a few weeks I just took that out. So here's the tank about 1 month later. We can definitely see some growth in here. I did remove the trees at this point. Like I said, they weren't doing well, so I put them in and grew them in another tank. The carpet is getting nice and full. Everything looks healthy. There is some water pooling at the bottom. I tried to remove it once, but didn't really work. And here we can see a picture of that moss growing on the rock. So this is the tank at a little over 2 months, maybe 9 weeks. You can see carpet is still very healthy and lush, nice colored green. Very little die-off, if any. It's really growing nicely. Water still pooling in the tank, but I didn't run into any like fungus or root rot or anything like that, which I heard about in other videos, but I didn't seem to have that issue. And then also here, once again, is the moss and growing on the rock. So at 10 weeks, I decided to flood the tank, and here I am filling it up with RO DI water that has been added with Seachem Equilibrium to bring up the minerals in the tank. So if you're using RO water, make sure that you remineralize it. Otherwise, your plants won't do well, nor will your fish. So here's the tank filled up with water. Add a little bit of this stone to the path, and the filter that I am using on the tank is a Tidal, I think 35. It's temporary. I do plan on upgrading to a nice canister filter. You can see a little bit of brown spots there, so that's what I did decide to flood the tank. Also, this is my CO diffuser, an F zone, which I hook up to a paintball, 20-ounce paintball container, which hides nicely behind. I'm probably going to add a some sort of screen behind there. Haven't decided just yet to either do a frosted or a white background. And so here's a nice view, full tank view shot of the tank. You can see how thick and lush that grass has grown in, not grass, Cuba has grown in, and it makes that look like really like, you know, grass, with its even kind of falling over some of the rock. So it's going to be interesting in the next few weeks what happens. Do I have an algae growth or not? I don't know at this point. We'll have to see. But hopefully I won't. I do plan on adding some cleanup crew in about another week. I did reduce the lighting schedule down to 8 hours a day and lowered the intensity just a little bit. My future plans for this tank is to add back in the trees with the moss, and add the livestock, which is going to be guppies, possibly like some Moscow blues, or something along those lines. I think that would be really cool, kind of very flowy fins, and possibly some red crystal shrimp as far as my cleanup crew would go. It's been a very interesting and exciting journey. I'm really happy with the way that the tank turned out, and I'm excited about, now that it has water in it, what's going to happen next. I will keep you updated in about a month as to what happens now that I've added water to the tank. So if you like what you see, please like this video, and if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. Thank you.